Through the introduction of the STEM racing program in South African schools, the Sofiso Learning Group is hoping that the impact will be far wider than just racing. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Lights Out. I'm Irene Marie van der Walt, and I recently had a chat with Sizwe Nsana, one of the co-founders of the Sofiso Learning Group, about the impact of this program and their future plans for it in South Africa. Then we also have a quick look or a roundup of the Red Bull Ring before Formula One goes racing there, and some key statistics you'll need to know for the race week. Stay tuned, we'll be right back after this.
Namibia is a land of movement, with waves that never stop reaching forward. Here, adventure is not something we search for. It is something we are born into. In every corner of this country, creativity rises, from artists, from athletes, from dreamers. And when the world comes to explore Namibia, they discover something extraordinary. Because when sport moves people, creativity moves ideas, and tourism moves the world toward us. Something powerful happens. A platform where movement meets imagination, where industries connect, where opportunity grows, where Namibia's next chapter begins. Welcome to the Creative Sport Tourism Expo. Exhibit, partner, experience. Creative Sport Tourism.
We are all the way in Joburg in Ilovo with Dr. Sizwe Nsana. Did I say it correctly? Almost correctly. Yeah. Okay, so tell me, Irene. Yes. Okay, so tell me a little bit about STEM Racing South Africa. You've just mentioned this is your first year expanding into South Africa. Why expand into South Africa in the first place? Was it important to have this?
For starters, STEM Racing is global. It runs in about over 60 countries throughout the world. And introducing it in South Africa is particularly important in the context of developing skills and competencies of young people. Because as we know, the world is really moving, and the world of work has changed quite drastically over the last couple of years, and technology has a major impact on what happens to young people. And therefore, introducing STEM racing in the schools in South Africa is particularly important. It's very much aligned to the government's policy of building competencies and skills of the future for young people. It develops a lot of skills around critical thinking, problem solving, working together, because learners and students work together in building those miniature cars. But also it helps with communication, because when they're working in teams, they're working together. And it's particularly important because it introduces a lot of STEM concepts from a young age. So we're introducing STEM racing in primary schools, where the primary school children from around age 11 or otherwise grade 4, get to experience of working together, engineering, graphic design. They get to understand concepts such as computer-assisted design, computer-assisted engineering, and all those concepts are particularly important. Therefore, it definitely will encourage a lot of young people to, one, understand STEM, two, develop their own skills and competencies, and three, to be able to actually pursue careers in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, which are particularly important. And this country, South Africa, is facing a serious crisis when it comes to the number of young people at schools who are pursuing STEM. And therefore, this is a very exciting way of introducing STEM, with a sport that may have been seen as very exclusive, and we make it accessible. We are going to be working particularly in non-fee paying schools, which are catering for the poor, which is really important, because very often initiatives such as this are only limited to schools that are in the top class, that cater for, families that can afford, that are able to pay a lot of money, private schools and that kind of thing. But introducing it in public schools that are at the lower income level is particularly important.
So you've now said, introducing STEM in a way that is exciting to young people. Obviously, STEM subjects have kind of been seen as the hard subjects, as I've got to go to physics again, I've got to go to math again. What do you think makes this concept so exciting? What do you think we can learn in teaching kids STEM in a classroom setting from the STEM racing setting?
Well, the most important part is because there's a lot of play integrated in STEM racing. So it looks like play, it looks like you have miniature vehicles, it looks like, children are sort of playing around, but actually in the process of the playing, you introduce a lot of these really important concepts. And I must say that it's not just STEM, in other words, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, because when designing the car, it's got to look aesthetically pleasing. And therefore there's arts, in terms of your design and so on.
Yeah.
So it introduces a lot of these features in a fine kind of way. There's competition, there's participation. So we find often, because we've been introducing coding and robotics and AI in schools over the last 3 years, and we find that even those students who probably are more reserved and maybe more quiet and maybe not expressing their views in the classroom, suddenly when you introduce something like coding and robotics, or STEM racing in this case, suddenly those children find expression through creating miniature cars, as an example, to express themselves, and it builds their confidence and so on. So it's a really important initiative.
So tell me a little bit about how this works practically in a school. Is this an extra class that kids can take? Is it integrated into their class? Is it an after-school activity?
Yeah, so in our situation, we've taken the schools where we've already introduced artificial intelligence, coding and robotics, which is completely integrated in the curriculum. It is in the timetable. It is used for assessments, for promotion purposes from one grade to the next. Those are the schools where you're introducing STEM racing, because they already understand some of the basic concepts that are important in STEM racing. So this will be additive. Yes, it is not necessarily included in the curriculum by the Department of Education, Basic Education, but it's very complementary. And therefore, it will build on the skills and competencies that our students already have. Engineering, graphic design, and computer-assisted design, and all of these skills, which are particularly important.
So tell me a little bit about the rollout of this. This is still very new. Obviously, you're not going to go into every school in South Africa day one. How is that rollout plan looking for you guys?
So the rollout plan, as I indicated, we're taking schools that are already teaching coding and robotics. We're starting with primary schools and high schools, particularly in this province in Gauteng, as well as the Free State. So we're starting with 2 of the 9 provinces, and then we'll scale it from there.
So what is a school who wants to get involved with you guys, who's not currently on the rollout plan? How do they contact you and say, hey, we're also over here?
Well, as I said, obviously there's a lot of funding which is required to run, STEM racing in schools. So it also depends on the kind of funding that we're able to raise. But as I said, we've worked now over the last 2 years with 115 schools in South Africa. And a lot of them involve us as Sifiso Learning Group and Sifiso EdTech, building laboratories, building the infrastructure, providing connectivity in those schools, training teachers on how to actually do coding and robotics. And it's the same with STEM racing. So it's not just bringing STEM racing kits and tracks. It is a whole ecosystem, including devices, computers, tablets, and so on, that are required to actually make this work. So a school that may be interested, of course, if they have those resources already and are able to afford to pay for them, then obviously they can participate. But as I said, for us, inclusivity is really, really important, which is why we're taking schools that are often forgotten, that cater for children that come from very poor backgrounds.
One thing you've mentioned now that's interesting is the STEM racing kit.
Yes.
What's in that kit? What is that track?
Well, it's everything that you need to build a miniature car. So it will have the chassis, it will have a body, it will have some, obviously, technology to make it
Run.
drive fast. And the faster you can actually make it to go, obviously the better for. So the learners and the teachers learn about aerodynamics, they learn about speed, they learn about physics concepts, and so on in the process, which is particularly important. So the number of components, that go into it.
Okay, so tell me a little bit about you. Why was it important to you to include STEM racing in schools?
Well, our whole philosophy as a Sifiso Learning Group is to make a contribution in improving the quality of education in South Africa and the rest of Africa, actually. So this is very aligned to what we do. So we have created a whole ecosystem as a private institution that works with the public system. So in our group, we have schools, we own our own schools, we test a lot of things that we do and scale to the public system in our own schools called Future Nation Schools. We have an education technology company which helps with integrating technology in learning and teaching in the classroom. We have a teacher training college called Nation Next College, which trains teachers across different domains from early childhood development all the way up to high school. So this is really very much aligned to what we do already as Sifiso Learning Group.
Mm-hmm. So tell me a little bit about, obviously you've got this entire learning group and you're trying to integrate STEM racing into schools now. What do you want children to say about the STEM racing program and about the Sifiso Learning Group, say 10, 15 years down the line? What would you want them to take out of it?
Well, the first thing is just to remember and have memories of having fun. Because schooling for a lot of children is not fun. So just introducing play in school and learning through play is particularly important and very effective way of learning. Students are not memorizing, they're not involved in rote learning, they're actually doing something really practical in the classroom, something they can relate to, something that comes from the real world, it's not theoretical, which is really, really important. And secondly, I want the children to go back and say, their days at school were fun. They worked with one another. They learned from one another. Yes, teachers were important and they were involved in the process. But the most important memories that all of us have are those teachers who took care of ourselves, those teachers who gave us advice, those teachers who told us that we matter. But also, often it's about memories of your friends. That's where you create friends and friendships. The friends that I have today are friends that I had from school, like 50 years ago. I still remember those friends. They're still my friends today, some of them. So those are the kind of memories that we want to leave. But more importantly, it's opening avenues for young people and opening their eyes to things that they may not have thought about, to careers and opportunities that they never thought about. One of the things that we're not short of, particularly in the township and rural schools, is talent. There's plenty of talent. What we are short of is opportunity. So what this does, it presents opportunities for young people to say, okay, there's actually another world out there. There's a global world out there. So people are not just limited in their view to what is happening in their village or in their township. They'll be competing globally in Singapore or elsewhere as they participate in STEM racing.
In Formula One, maybe. So tell me a little bit, you're talking now about opportunities and giving kids opportunities, but oftentimes the people who create opportunities for those who are less fortunate have a certain amount of challenges in creating those opportunities. What are your challenges at present?
Well, challenges are, we prefer to look at it as opportunities for solving problems as opposed to challenges.
I like that.
Schools in the townships and rural areas are overcrowded. They have limited resources. Teachers are often overwhelmed by just the lack of facilities and resources that they have. So just bringing solutions, through initiatives such as STEM racing to those environments, actually it's amazing what it does. And they appreciate every little thing that you bring because, often they are forgotten. They are forgotten. So it's important to be able to participate. That's why we were quite deliberate in choosing schools in the townships and rural areas that are often forgotten. And it's amazing what happens when you do that, because as I said earlier, you bring an opportunity and suddenly the eyes of these young people. One of the schools that we're working with in the Free State comes from a rural area. They've been all the way internationally competing on coding and robotics. And something that they never, teachers and learners and students never thought was even possible for them, but it's possible.
Exactly. So tell me a little bit about what this wider network, obviously STEM Racing South Africa forms part of a global network of STEM racing sort of subsidiaries, I guess you could call it. So tell me a little bit about what that network means to you here in South Africa.
Well, we as Sifiso Learning Group and through our schools, Future Nation Schools, are now part of a global network of problem and project-based learning schools where we adopt PBL as an approach to learning and teaching. In a few weeks from now, I'll be taking a group of teachers to Denmark. Next year, they're going to China and Singapore. The following year, they're going to America. Another set of teachers are going to the US. And these are all schools that are a network of PBL. So STEM racing is particularly important in that context because it expands our network, and our teachers and students get exposed to how learning and teaching is like in other parts of the world, which is particularly important for their own growth and development.
Okay, Doctor, thank you so much. Any last words before we...
Well, we are really honored as Sifiso Learning Group to be part of STEM Racing South Africa. It's an amazing initiative. It's a really important initiative, particularly for the benefit of our students and our teachers who will be exposed to something that is really amazing, that is global, that is exciting, that is playful, and at the same time, they're learning really important lessons when it comes to STEM, when it comes to graphic design, when it comes to creative arts, actually, which is really, really important. Thank you.
Doctor, thank you so much for joining us. There you have it. If you are in Gauteng or the Free State and you'd like to join the STEM Racing South Africa program, reach out to the Sifiso Learning Group. Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
As Formula heads to Spielberg, Austria for the Austrian Grand Prix, we are of course headed back to the Red Bull Ring. Let's have a look at a few key statistics from this circuit. So for Red Bull Ring, they held their first Grand Prix in 1970. They have a circuit length of 4.318 kilometers. That's an important statistic for you to remember later on. Surprise tool that can help you later. The number of laps for this Grand Prix will be 71, and the total race distance then comes to 306.452 kilometers. The lap record standing from 2018 is by Kimi Räikkönen, not our current Kimi, our former Kimi, with a lap record of 1 minute 6 seconds and 9.957. And then moving on, we have a look at our wins. There were 21 Grand Prix held here so far. 57% of them ended with a safety car since 1993. Most wins by a driver goes to Max Verstappen. Again, another statistic that you need to keep in mind is the number 5. Max Verstappen with 5 wins, the most for any driver at the circuit, followed by Mika Häkkinen with 2 wins and Michael Schumacher with 2 as well. Then moving over to the constructors' wins, Mercedes with 7 wins, the most wins by a constructor at the Red Bull Ring. And you remember I told you to remember that number 5. That is also coincidentally the same number of wins for Red Bull at the circuit. They take second place here. And then Ferrari in third with 4 wins in total for them. Wins by grid starting position, obviously pole position a favorite with 11 wins from pole position, that's first place. 5 wins from third position, and second grid position falling below the third grid position with 3 wins from the second place. Your pit loss is roughly 20.3 seconds under normal race conditions. That falls to somewhere between 11 and 13 seconds under a safety car conditions. And then this also is known to be an undercut track due to short lap times. Again, like I mentioned, short lap times, high tire degradation, and then a lot of help from your straight line DRS zones. The world of Formula One is big and broad, and there is a lot happening, but there are some topics that are not serious enough for a serious motorsport program to discuss. Let's have a look at some of those topics. So this week on We Don't Talk About It, we won't talk about how Fernando Alonso's partner shared a first picture of their baby on Father's Day. Fernando Alonso, if you're not caught up on the news, recently became a father for the first time with a Formula One journalist pictured here. Then moving on, another thing we won't talk about this week is that Lando Norris and Portuguese actress Maggie are seemingly done with. Speculation has been floating for a long time. From the beginning of the season, when Lando Norris was seemingly on a video told Carlos Sainz. Carlos Sainz asked him, "How's Maggie?" And Lando then seemed to, the lip reader say, he seemed to then say, "No, that's over." But now the pair have unfollowed each other on Instagram, and this is in Instagram speak. This is the most official that a breakup is going to get. Maggie was the first to unfollow Lando, and then Lando followed suit shortly after. Picture there is the moment that Lando Norris won his first and thus far only world championship, sharing an intimate moment with Maggie. Another thing we won't be talking about for this week is that same Lando Norris was seen hanging around with two influencers, Alex Earl and another Anastasia known as Stassi Baby. This is footage from her birthday celebration and her celebrations of the Monaco Grand Prix, which she attended with the fitness wear brand Alo. Lando obviously pictured there as well. And then lastly, what we won't be talking about this week is Alexandre Leclerc being spotted in Los Angeles with that same fitness wear brand Alo. So it seems like they've had a busy PR week in the Formula One world. And that's what we won't be talking about in Formula One this week. That brings us to the end of this week's episode of Lights Out. Thank you so much for joining us. Remember that you can catch Lights Out at 5:30 every Friday afternoon on network television. That's DSTV 285 and GoTV 25 in Namibia, as well as oneup2.com online and in the rest of the world. So until next week, from myself, Irene Marie van der Walt, and the entire Lights Out team, drive it like you stole it.